Okay, Maria, we can get started whenever you're ready.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maria, and you might know me from doing other sewing programs, either in the library or virtually. And today we have two really cool projects to make. We're going to be doing bowl covers and utensil holders. Now, I'll show you a couple of my samples over here. Now, the bowl covers are going to be reversible if you choose to. Of course, they don't have to be. So whatever fabric you choose, just do something fun, you know, have fun with it. I chose these because they were very picnicky, very, you know, summery. But yeah, they fit pretty snugly on my nice little bowl over here. And then I made a smaller one as well. Nice and cute. And they're cool. They're good to cover pretty much anything that's, you know, approximately this size. But you can make them bigger, smaller, different colors. The cool thing is that you can actually go to the fabric store and get, you know, themed fabrics if you wanted to do them for Christmas or Thanksgiving. You know, that would be pretty cool too. Alrighty, so we're going to start with our machine over here. Of course, we need some fabric. So I have this sample. It's just plain cotton fabric. And if you're going to use two different patterns, you need two different fabrics. A fat quarter is pretty good for about one or two covers. But I suggest if you want to make multiple covers, maybe 2 yards would do the trick. And that would probably give you about like 8 or 9, depending on the size of your bowls. You also need a bowl handy. So I got mine over here. You'll need a marker, fabric marker. This one actually is a dry erase marker. I do not recommend those. But this is going to make the, you know, the markings on my fabric a little bit clearer for you guys to see. So yeah, you might need some pinking shears. If you don't have them, that's okay. We're just going to use a zigzag stitch too. But for those of you who don't know what pinking shears are, they're scissors, but they have these really cool edges. So if you see, it's going to make like little, like a zigzag pattern when you cut. And that's going to prevent fraying, and it's going to also reduce bulk on your fabric. Again, if you don't have them, you can kind of make the same effect with a zigzag stitch, which I'll show you too. Alrighty, and then scissors, rulers, all that good stuff. So I'll start by showing you how to, I guess, trace your pattern, and then we'll go on to the sewing machine, and I'll show you how to you know, thread it, go ahead and make it beautiful, just be set up, and we'll go from there. Okay, so I'm gonna just turn my camera over here. So first thing you want to do is get whatever bowl you're going to be using, and just going to turn that over there so you can see better. Just flip it over, and you're going to go ahead and trace it. Now, I would say center it as much as you can in your fabric, just because we're going to also create about a 3-inch or 2.5-inch seam allowance on this. Not because we're going to, you know, go ahead and sew all those 3, you know, inches, but we just want to make sure that we have enough room to, or enough fabric to cover the bowl afterwards. So we're going to go ahead and center this as much as you can. And we're going to go ahead and trace that. Okay. And that's your first step. So that's going to be your guide for making the actual cut line. So like I said, you can use 3 inches, you can use 2.5. Pretty much you'll see the more you give, the more lip there's going to have. Like for instance, this one only has about like 1.5 inches, so it's closer to the top. But with this guy, I decided to make it a little bit longer, and I left the full 3 inches. So that way, if I wanted to put it on a bigger bowl, it kind of has the room for it too. So it's not specific for just that one bowl. So it could be a little versatile. All right, so next we're going to use either your ruler or your tape measure, but we're going to go ahead and measure that out. So we're going to do, let's see, I have room on my fabric to do 2.5 inches the whole way around. So we're going to measure those 2.5 inches, and you're just going to make a little line at the top. And then you're going to go ahead and leave a little space and do another little line. So this is going to be a great guide for you to be able to cut the fabric. Okay, I always have a hard time cutting circles. I feel like it could always get lopsided, or one side's going to be flat and the other side's going to be round. So this is actually a pretty nice way to keep it even and to make sure that you have even spaces throughout. It doesn't have to be perfect. Like all my projects, there is a lot of room for error, but this helps kind of make it a little bit more uniform. Okay. So as we do that, now if you are comfortable using your rotary cutters and you're comfortable cutting in a circular motion with your rotary cutters, go ahead and use those. I just use plain scissors because I'm not very good with my rotary cutters. So I always deviate, and I always feel like I'm going to cut myself or, cut the fabric. All right, so we're gonna want 2 pieces, right? So you can either make sure that your fabric is folded in 2, or if you're gonna use 2 different fabrics, you can just kind of do the same thing on your other fabric, and then we're just gonna cut it, okay? So once that is done, I actually have pre-cut ones, so you don't have to watch me cut, but this is what it's gonna look like, right? So you're gonna have one like this and the other one like this. Of course, if you haven't done so already, or if I didn't mention it, I usually put the markings on the wrong side of the fabric. That way you don't see the markings. Okay, and usually the wrong side of the fabric is much lighter, so you can actually see the markings a little better. Okay, so now we're gonna set up our machine. Okay, gonna go ahead. And for those of you who have been in my classes, you should know this by now, but if you haven't, that's okay. I'll show you from the ground up. So this is my lovely brother machine. It's a very simple machine, no bells and whistles. Everything is pretty standard. And I hope that's enough for you guys to see. But basically, every machine, or most machines, come with, of course, a manual, but they also come with other diagrams. So if you see, this particular machine has the diagrams on the top, okay? And those diagrams are going to help you thread your machine. All right, so we're going to start with the top. Okay, usually your machine will have a little pop-up, I guess you call it stick, but you put your thread in here, and you're going to go ahead and follow the diagram that is up here. Okay, so the dashed line is for threading your bobbin, and then your solid line is going to be for threading your actual machine. So we're going to go ahead and follow that diagram with our thread. Sorry, I need a free hand. Okay, and we're going to go like that. And then usually there are numbers. If there aren't any numbers, your manual will help you also in threading your machine. But in this particular case, it goes straight from the metal clip and it goes down under your tension knob. And then there's a little silver, I don't know if you can see it. a little silver apparatus kind of thing that's inside of your machine. You want to go over and then under. And then you're going to come down to this part over here. And there's a little lip right there. So you're going to go ahead and insert your thread through there. And then you're going to thread your needle from front to back. So depending on your thread, you might want to cut the tip of it so it's nice and straight for you to go in. Whoops. And then you just pull right through, and that's how you pretty much thread your machine. Now the bobbin's always a tricky one. Everybody's got problems with the bobbin, even I do. But your bobbin is basically this little, you know, little donut that goes on the bottom part, and it's going to help your stitch stick together. So you want to hold it like a backwards P. So your tail of your thread is going to be on the left side of the bobbin. Okay. So you're going to hold that in place, and you see this little guy? This came straight from the bottom right here. Okay. So there are top loading bobbins and there are side bobbins. This is a side bobbin, and this is how you do it. So basically it comes in like that, right? You just pull the lever, the little lever right here, and you pop it out. You're going to turn it so that the hollow side is facing you. Okay. Let's see the hollow side. All right. And you're going to go ahead, and again, you're holding the thread on the left side. You're going to pop it in. And then that thread that you had hanging out, you're going to go and loop it through that little kind of eyelet that you have right there. Okay. Make sure not to pull it too tight because sometimes it does break. And then you just follow it through, and it comes out this little hole right here. Okay. So you're going to hold that with your 2 fingers, just like I am right there. You're going to turn it so that the bobbin side, the thread side is going into your machine. You're going to lift that little lip right here. Okay. And you're going to make sure that that little stick aligns with your machine. I don't know if you can see that well. But it is now aligned in there, and you're good to go. So now the next question that I always get is, how do you get that thread to go up? It's very, very, very simple. And it actually, why is my camera being all wonky? Excuse me, I'm having a little technical difficulty. Okay, so it keeps. There we go. Hold on. Sorry, guys. Sorry, technical difficulties. If you know me, I always have some. Okay, so basically what you want to do, and this is the easiest way to do it, and I hope you can see it, but you're going to hold the tension, okay, on this piece of thread, the top thread, okay? And the top thread is going to help bring out your bottom. Okay. So let's see if I can show you that from this angle. For some reason, this guy, sorry guys, I'm going to go ahead and turn my little thing a little bit to tighten it. Ah, there we go. Sorry. Okay. So we're going to hold this piece of thread, the one on the top. Okay. We're going to, as tight as you can. And then with your manual side lever, you're going to go ahead and bring your needle down a couple of times, 2, and then you're going to see it brings up the thread. Okay, so it's brought it up, and you can use scissors or whatever you have on hand to bring it up. And then you have brought your bobbin thread up, and you're ready to sew. Okay, so this project requires a couple of things. We're going to use a zigzag stitch, and we're also going to use a straight stitch. Now, your machine is going to come with lots of little buttons and lots of little knobs to kind of play with. So in my particular machine, this one over here that shows kind of the zigzag and the dashed line, that one is going to actually control whether I have a straight stitch or a zigzag stitch. For the first steps in our project, we're going to go ahead and use a straight stitch. So I'm just going to put it all the way to the 0, and that makes it straight. Now, this guy over here, where you see that it has like a bunched up stitches and then larger and larger stitches, that's going to control the length of our stitch. So that's going to make it so each stitch is either separated apart a little bit more or longer, or if it's going to be super tiny bunched up together. I like to put it in like about a 2. I think that's pretty comfortable. And then this little guy that you see here positions your needle. So if you like it left, or you can have it in the middle, you can have it in the right. I like to have it on the right. I feel like I have more visibility that way, but just keep in mind that wherever your needle is placed, it's going to pretty much control like your seam allowance a little bit too. So if you want it in the middle, that's kind of a good place to start too. All right, so let's get started with our fabric. Okay, so now that we've cut our fabric and it's all ready to get sewn, you're going to go ahead and place your fabric right sides together. Okay. And you're going to line it up as much as you can. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. Just as much as you can. Perfect. Alrighty, so we're going to go ahead and pin around. Now, I like to pin this project kind of like from where we made the initial outline of our bowl. That way, it just doesn't get in the way of us sewing around. And I just put a few, not a crazy bunch, maybe like 5 or 6 is fine. You just want it so that your fabric doesn't shift too much. Okay, and now you end up with something like this. Okay. Alrighty, so now we are going to get started on this. Again, we're going to use a straight stitch. Right now, we're going to use about a 1/4 seam allowance, and we're going to leave 2 inches of space so we are able to turn the project over. Now, I do this all the time, so, and it's pretty embarrassing, but I always overstitch the 2-inch gap, so I really like to kind of mark it with something bright. So I know that, oh, that's my mark, so I don't sew over it. So I'm just going to make 2 markers slots right there, and I'm also going to just put this little red pin in here so I remember, oh, don't go past that pin, because I always do that, and I always end up having to rip my seam. So, you know, not fun. All right, so we're going to start. And again, 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now, if you notice, your presser foot down here, where the feeding docks are, there's a bunch of little lines. Those little lines are actually guides, and on some sewing machines, it'll tell you whether it's a 1/4 or a 1/2 or whatever the measurement is, and you can pretty much tell that that's your seam allowance. Okay, so I would go ahead and line up your fabric wherever you, like the first line is fine. You can also go up to the second line, and that's cool too. Okay, now I'm going to start where I made that marking for my opening. And you got to excuse me, my machine is a little loud. So if it's pretty loud, I apologize. Okay. And once again, we're just following the edge and making sure that everything gets caught in there. And you might want to go slow on this, just because sometimes when you're sewing something with a shape like a circle, it gets pretty easy to kind of go everywhere, and it makes it a little bit uneven. So just try to go as slow and comfortable as you can. Okay. Now you're going to see that I'm kind of way out of the quarter-inch allowance, but that's because my fabric wasn't matching up. So I just kind of made the quarter-inch seam allowance kind of on the shorter fabric. If I did it on the longer one, there is a chance that the shorter fabric wasn't going to catch. So, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So I'm just going to finish this out really quick. Okay, so there's my marker, and I'm gonna say, I'm gonna go up to it, and I'm gonna stop. You don't need to backstitch, you don't need to do any of that stuff, but just make sure your needle's in the upright position. Lift your foot pedal, and there you go. So we have finished the first steps of making our bowl covers. We're going to cut any little tails. Alrighty, and that reminder worked perfectly because now I have 2 inches in there, and you can remove all of your pins. Okay. Now, remember how I was telling you that one of my fabric pieces was a little bit larger than the other one? So this is what I meant. So the blue one's just a little bit shorter than the other one. So I always want to try to do the inch allowance, the seam allowance on the shorter piece, because that's going to ensure that, it catches well and there's no gaps in my project. But you can go ahead and check for any gaps, check if there's, anything's, there's any holes in there. You can do that by just simply inserting your finger into the little hole and just kind of checking to see if there's any separation. If you find that there isn't any, you can go ahead and trim some of the edges with your pinking scissors. I'll show you how that looks like. So, for instance, like over here, I have a pretty big piece of fabric. So I'm just gonna go ahead and and as you can see, it's all zigzaggy. And again, that's going to prevent a little bit of fraying, and it's going to reduce the bulk in your project. And I'm going to show you the alternative in a couple of seconds. On the other half, I'm just going to get the most I can out of this. Okay, perfect. Now we're going to go ahead and switch to a zigzag stitch to ensure that our project does not fray, and it's also going to flatten our project a little bit, so there is a reduction in bulk. So when I talk about reduction in bulk is when you flip this over, you're going to notice that, you know, this part, like the finished project part, is going to be like kind of bulky, like you could feel the excess fabric in there. So when we talk about reducing bulk, we're talking about reducing that extra fabric that's left in the project by the end. It just makes it feel a little bit lighter. It's also going to look neater. And it's going to make it easier for you to sew the rest of your project too. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and change our knobs to a zigzag. So I'm going to go ahead and go to a 3. I like the zigzag 3. It's not too big, it's not too small, it's kind of just in the middle. And I'm just going to leave my stitch length at 2. Okay, so let's try that out. See how comfortable we are with that. And let me just position you right again. Okay, and once again, I'm going to use my marker, my red pin, to put right where I want to stop. Because when I was doing the other ones, I totally didn't stop. So, all right, and this time you're going to kind of go on the edge. And the reason for that is that it's going to catch both of the edges, and it's going to, you know, kind of seal those 2 edges together for us. Okay. All right, here we go. Okay, I'm going to stop where I did my pinking shears, just because you know, I don't want to mess up that fabric a little bit. So once again, upright position for my needle. I'm going to get that out of there. Snip. Okay. So see our little zigzag stitch. Perfect. And once you've completed that zigzag stitch, you're going to feel the difference between where your fabric was before, like how it was before, and then without the zigzag stitching. And I think it makes a pretty big difference. And in other projects, you could do that for pretty much anything. If you don't have like a serger, which is that special machine that completes your project and prevents the fraying, you can always use a zigzag stitch for pretty much all fabrics. And it's going to prevent that fraying, it's going to reduce the bulk, and it just makes it a little bit easier. Okay, so now we are ready to turn our project over. All righty, so shake it out. You can use your fingers, you can use a pencil. I wouldn't use the pointy end of the pencil, maybe just like the eraser part. And just, you know, push out all those edges. Push them out, push them out. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. Now the next step is to go ahead and press. So you can go ahead and press your project with an iron, or you could just leave it like this. Either way, your project is going to turn out beautifully. But I guess the most important part in this is that all of your project is pushed out as much as possible. So nothing's tucked in, and nothing's kind of in the way. Okay. Perfect. Alrighty. So now you're going to go ahead and tuck this guy into the opening of your 2-inch opening. We're going to tuck that in. You're just going to press it with your fingers. It's good enough. Okay, and now the next step is to make the channel in which your elastic is going to go through. Now it depends on two things. I like to thread my elastic using a safety pin. Now, if you have a bigger safety pin than a small, rather than a small one, your channel is probably going to need to be a little bit larger just because it won't fit the safety pin through. I'm using, I don't know, I'm using kind of like a smaller one, not a teeny tiny one, but you know, I guess medium sized. But yes, so that's going to be what we're going to use to thread our elastic through our channel. But to make our channel, we're going to go ahead and turn our knobs once again to that straight stitch. Okay, we're going to leave it at the 2. I'm feeling very comfortable with that 2. And we're going to go ahead and put that marker once again where we do not want to go over. Or actually, no, we do need to go over that. I'm sorry, scratch that. No, sorry. Pretend I did not say that. We're going to go in a 1/2 inch seam allowance all around. Okay, and it is going to include that side where the opening is. Okay, once again, I'm going to use my trusty dusty tape measure, and I'm going to make the markings. I'm going to make them on the lighter side so you can see them. But I'm going to make the markings so I can follow along these little markings and make sure that I have an even distribution of my channel. Sometimes if you don't do this, your channel might end up narrow in some areas than in others. So I find it very important to just make sure it's even. Just for easiness of making sure that, oh, my safety pin is going to go through. Because trust me, I've done it where I thought I was a hot shot and I didn't do this. And then halfway through threading my elastic, my safety pin didn't fit. So what did I have to do? I had to go ahead and unstitch half of my project and redo it all over again. Because that didn't work out. So we don't want to do that. So, and of course, if you're using a fabric marker, which I totally recommend for this, that marker is going to be a little on the lighter side, and it's also completely washable. If you don't have a fabric marker and you're reduced to using something like what I'm using, it's a little bit tougher to get out. It's not completely impossible, but it will take a few washes, and you might have to even Google how to get out dry erase marker on your fabric. So now we have our little markers, and we're going to follow those markers to go ahead and sew our channel for our elastic. Okay, once again, we're going to do that with a straight stitch. And here we go. Alrighty, so. Alrighty. So pretty much right now, we're just playing connect the dots with your sewing machine. Okay. All right, see, I deviated. And once again, my recommendation is to go slower than I'm going, because as you can probably see in some of the areas, I kind of deviated from connecting my dots. it just makes it harder to control the fabric when you're going pretty fast. So try to go slow. I have a heavy foot, so. You could pretend you're driving through a school area, and that should slow you down a little bit. Right, and now we're gonna go ahead and finish that. Come on. Alrighty. Now you can backstitch here, you can leave it alone, but I like to backstitch just a couple. And to backstitch, you're always going to have a little lever, and it's going to have, you can't see it, but there's a little white diagram there of like a U-turn arrow, you could say. And that is going to go ahead and do your backstitch. You have to hold the lever. In some machines, it's even easier, and you just flip a switch or, you know, press a button, and it kind of does it. So, but in this one, you have a lever. Okay, so now I'm just cutting out all my little bits and pieces, making sure I clean it up well. And now you're going to end up with a circle with, you know, all the dots connected. Okay, and you're still going to have your opening. Okay, but it's not going to be, you know, all the way into your project. It's just going to be into the little channels. Okay, so this is the interesting part. Okay, now I recommend a 1/4 inch elastic. If you don't have that, you can use something a little bit thicker, but let me show you the difference. So this is my lovely spool of 1/4 inch elastic. So it's a little bit thinner. This is a 1/2 inch one. So you can see, you know, the thinner one is going to go in a little bit more smoothly than the thicker one. So I'm going to go ahead with my thin one.
Maria, where do you order your elastic from?
I ordered mine from Amazon.
Okay, great.
And I gotta tell you, it took a little while, I guess, because, you know, elastic is in such high demand right now, but it got to me and it was pretty cheap. It was like 100 yards for like 20 bucks. So Amazon, you know, pretty good deal.
Yeah, I had the same exact roll, and I also got it from Amazon. So
Okay,
I haven't been able to find the larger roll at any of the other craft stores. So I was
everything sold out.
Okay.
Yeah, everything is completely sold out. So if you can Amazon it, totally Amazon it. Even if it's not Prime, I didn't do Prime with this one, just because it wasn't available in Amazon Prime, but Amazon 20 bucks, 100 yards of elastic is a pretty good deal. And you can use it for so much stuff. It's crazy. Alrighty, so I've gone to go ahead and pinned my safety pin to my piece of elastic. See, nice and secure. So we're going to go ahead and find our opening, and we're going to go ahead and thread it through one of the openings in that little channel. And we're just going to start, and we're going to pull. So you're basically going to feel for your safety pin, and you're just going to pull it through, and you're just going to keep pulling it and pulling it. I don't have a set, I don't believe there's a set measurement for your elastic as far as like how much you want to use. This is because you don't want to waste elastic, especially in these times where we can be making masks with them. What I do is I just keep it attached to the spool or to the large amount, whatever you have, and you just keep, you know, going and going. And that'll save you a little bit, because you don't want to cut like, you know, 25 inches or 24 inches of elastic and then, you know, cut like halfway down the middle or something, and then you won't have enough for another project and it's just a scrap. So I totally suggest leaving it on your spool or gathered in like a little ball like that. And I don't know, we're just going to keep, you know, working through it. And you're going to see that it's going to start bunching up. And that's exactly what we wanted to do. But to get it through the channel, you're just going to smooth it out as much as you can. Okay. And you're just working through it. All right, so right now we're halfway down through my circle. You know, an interesting thing too, if you wanted to do this, if you use a large enough circle, you can make yourself a shower cap, just saying. All right, so now we are at the other end of our projects. This is where we started, and this is the hole where we came out of. So what I like to do is kind of just go ahead and open that safety pin and pin that pin to the project just to ensure that our elastic doesn't go anywhere. Because as you go ahead and start fixing it, it's going to pull on it. So, and then it's going to get lost and you have to rethread. And that can always be frustrating. Okay, so we're going to spread out our fabric as evenly as possible. Okay, and then we're going to take our bowl and we are going to put this guy on top of our bowl. Now, where's my, okay, see, there's my safety pin. Okay, so we're going to insert it right there. And we're going to pull on the non-safety pin part. And we're just going to keep pulling. And you can pull as much as you want, as little as you want. And you're going to go ahead and just distribute your fabric. And you're going to come to a point where you're going to say, hey, I think that's, you know, tight enough. If you want it a little looser, you can make it a little looser as well. It's completely up to you. The world is your oyster here. You know, if you want a tighter bungee, you could totally do that. I like it kind of in the middle, you know, not too tight, not too loose either. And now I'm going to go ahead and use another safety pin, and I'm going to pin it, that elastic, to the fabric. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and take that other safety pin that we started with and unpin it. Okay, making sure that we don't lose our elastic. I lost my elastic. So lessons learned here. Be very careful because now I have to rethread this. Okay, so let's start all over. Sorry, guys. But you know, this is what happens. You know, if you're not careful with that elastic, you'll lose it and then you have to start all over again, which is kind of okay because, you know, it happens. All right, so we're going to start all over again. And all right, this time I'm going to try to keep my elastic sticking out. So I'm going to try doing my safety pin in another spot. But where's my channel? Okay, here's my channel. Once again, I'm going to start. Come on. Now, I like this project too. It's very simple. It makes a good gift if you're like a housewarming gift. Oh, it's awesome. Be like, oh, here's some new bowl covers. And, you know, they'll be like, oh my gosh, you made those. And they'll be so impressed. And, you know, it's one of those things. Gift
especially if you have you know, some food in it as well. And you give
absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
a nice fruit salad with a cover on it.
Yeah. Not like, oh, here's some bowl covers.
Yeah.
But yes, that's a great point, Amber. Maybe some food in that bowl would be great.
Yeah.
Unless you're gifting them bowls and, that's their gift and you wanted to like, spruce it up a little bit.
Yeah, I think you could still make a nice pasta salad or something. Yeah.
Okay.
Fresh green salad, something. But that would be such a great gift. It really.
Isn't it? Yeah, you bring it to the barbecue or you bring it to the housewarming. Oh, you could also fill it with potpourri. And then if you leave it out, it'll like kind of smell nice.
Wow, that is a great idea.
Or if you do like a little tiny bowl and put the potpourri in, you could put it in your dresser drawer. And your dresser will always smell nice. Okay, so once again, I'm straightening out and this time I'm really making sure that elastic stays out.
So the key is really to have a piece sticking out, a little extra.
Yeah, a little extra. I think I was a little stingy before.
Okay.
I
have to waste a couple centimeters.
Not even an inch, maybe like half an inch, but let's leave it sticking out.
Yeah, and I guess you could always tie it off after, right?
Yes, so that was my next step actually. Before you cut the elastic, I like to tie a knot because that's going to help not losing your place or anything like that. Okay, so
yeah, I guess you could always tie a knot before you start too, like if you had a little knot on the end of that. But
true. Okay, so here's where I went
you're
wrong.
on a roll.
Yeah, so here's where I went wrong before. I just took out my safety pin. I didn't even, think twice about it. But okay, so here's my safety pin. I'm gonna take it out and I'm gonna go ahead and take it and I'm going to tie a little knot with my elastic. Oops. Sorry, trying to tie the knot. Beep, 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 beep. Okay, so I tied the knot with my elastic and now I can actually cut my elastic. Okay, so it fits good. I think I'm happy with it. Awesome. Now the next step is to go ahead and sew the two little tail ends of your elastic. I like to do that by hand with just a plain old needle and thread. I find it a little bit too, not complicated, but just, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a little bit of a nuisance, I guess, to do it on the machine. Just because you have to try to line it up and it's such a small little piece. So I just go ahead and do it with my needle and thread. And make sure that you tie a big enough knot at the end, otherwise it's going to go through.
Maria, I love how you highlight the mistakes that people could make during the program.
Well, yeah, because I make them all the time.
Me too. So you're probably saving everyone a lot of aggravation as they watch this.
Yeah, watch how I just, kind of,
No, it's
fumble through it.
It's great to learn from other people's
mistakes. Absolutely. And of course, if you're not great with, a needle and a thread, use a thimble, please. I have no idea how many times I've stuck myself with the needle.
Well, please don't show us what happens when you don't.
Oh my goodness, no. All right, I'm being super careful. All right, and you don't need to go crazy, just a couple of stitches is fine. And then just, tie it up a little bit. And all this is going to do is just reinforce that your elastic doesn't, so first it was the knot and then this, and it's kind of like a fail safe. So your elastic doesn't, you know, fall apart. Perfect. And there we go. Now we're going to hide that awful knot that's just hanging out there. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and try to move it to the side. I know it's a little tricky, but you know, try to move it to the side, like under that little tunnel. You can stick your finger in there. All right, now it's hidden. And now we're going to go ahead and seal off our opening. So very carefully, you're just going to go ahead and stretch it out. Make sure those closed ends are together. And we're going to go ahead and sew it. And again, doesn't have to be zigzag or anything. It's just one straight stitch. We call it an edge stitch because it's going to go as close to the edge as possible. Okay. That way it catches everything and you'll be a happy camper. Now, if you want to backstitch here, you can totally backstitch. If you do not want to backstitch, that's fine too. I like to backstitch a little bit just because, you know, just to make sure. So let's see. Okay. And I'm going to backstitch. Okay, and backstitch again. Okay, needle in the upright position. Go ahead and cut these little tails out. Cut anything that, you know, isn't serving you, like this little tail end.
Ruby, I just had a quick question. It looks like
Sure.
Josephine joined us a little late. I will repost the directions. We're doing the bowl cover right now, Josephine, and then we're going to move on to the utensil holder in just a moment. I also have a PDF of the directions, if that's a little bit easier than getting it from the chat, and you can email me from those for that as well. And I'm on email right now.
Ta-da!
So I'll put my email in and I will be more than happy to send you that PDF. And I'll repost the directions for the bowl cover right now.
Absolutely. And if you have any questions on the directions, let me know. You know, we'll clear it up. Okay, so that's it. We have our bowl cover and it is completely reversible. So if today you're feeling like you want to show off your green, show off the green. You know, if you want to mix and match and have, you know, green bowls and blue bowls, hey, go crazy. You know, there you have it. Bowl covers. Alrighty, any questions on this project?
Well, they really look great.
Thank you. And you see what I said about that shower cap? If you make them bigger, it could totally be a shower cap. Just saying, you know, versatility here, people. Versatility.
Absolutely.
Also, I wanted to point out that this actually works out for square or other shape bowls. You just do the same steps. You kind of just trace it, you know, you cut whatever you need to cut and you follow the same stuff and it'll fit quite nicely. I mean, I think the circle one could fit too, but yeah, the circle one fits too. But if you wanted to make a rectangle one, you know, you could do that. That's nice. And fill it with lots of goodies and send them to us at the library. No, just kidding. Okay. Yeah, any questions on this project or on anything?
If anyone has any questions, just let us know. I'm just reposted. The directions are really long. That's why you see me putting them in separate messages. So I actually recommend for
the PDF.
for this particular project. Josephine, yeah, it's gonna be so Josephine, I'm just gonna private message you and ask you for your email and send it to you that way.
Yeah, and I mean, the directions are a little long just because they're very detailed, but it's a very quick project. Very quick project. So like I said, you can use a couple of yards of fabric and you get a bunch of bowl covers that you can use. And yeah, go ahead and use them for your next party or barbecue, or I guess we're still social distancing. So your next dinner, maybe, you know?
Yeah, and just as a reminder too, this is posted currently on our YouTube station and will be there. So whatever you need to go back to rewatch, you just go to mcpl.tv and you can rewatch Maria's video that you're seeing today as many times as you need to. So if you need to go back and watch the part about elastic or how to thread your needle or wind your bobbin, Maria has been very generous and has allowed us to keep these posted. So Maria says, very nice project, thank you. I just have a quick question about why my fabric gets caught in the feed.
Your fabric is getting caught in the feed. What kind of fabric are you using, Maria? Because this could be a couple of things. It could be possibly that you're using the wrong needle for the wrong fabric. It could be your bobbin. Bobbin's always, you know, the problematic piece of it's kind of stretchy.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a kind of stretchy. Okay. So if you're using kind of a stretchy fabric, you want to use a universal needle is fine with that, but you also want to use zigzag stitches when you're using stretch fabric. So if you're using, let me try to show you something. So if you're using like a jersey knit type of fabric, you want to make sure you do zigzag stitches. That is going to keep the stretchiness of the stretch of the fabric, and then what happens is that I guess the way that the straight stitch works, it tends to pull like more on the fabric, and since you have the stretchy fabric, it'll definitely like give that pull, and it'll kind of pull into the mechanics of the sewing machine. So definitely a zigzag stitch for a like a jersey type of material, a stretchier type of material, and that should help you a little bit. If not, just check your bobbin. Sometimes when your bobbin isn't threaded correctly, it just causes it to tangle and it brings your fabric down with you. Any other questions?
Maria said thank you. So I think that answered your question. Yeah.
You're very, very welcome. All righty. Anybody else?
I don't see any other questions. So
you want to move along to our next project?
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and post the directions to the utensil holder. And again, same thing, if anyone wants a PDF of any of these projects, we can send them to you. I'm going to repost my email again. And I will be happy to send them to you. And then if you decide you want to make these in the future, again, at least you have the directions.
Yes. Okay, so we're going to move along to our utensil holder. Now, this utensil holder is very cool. It's very, very, very quick, very basic. And when you see the finished project, you're going to really see, oh, I have the finished project. You're going to see that it's very versatile. You can use it for pretty much anything. Depending on the size of fabric you're using, you can totally use this for gardening tools, for craft tools, for anything. It's not just for utensils. You can pretty much use it for anything that you might want to roll up and take with you. Okay, so, sorry, I unrolled it preemptively, but it kind of looks, hold on. sorry. It looks like a nice little gift, if you will. So here I used the bias tape. But in the project we're doing today, we're going to use the twill tape. So the twill tape basically just looks like a really nice, kind of like braid. This one's kind of more like a, I don't know, how do you call it? Like, kind of like a shoelace almost, but there are other twill tapes that are more like ribbony. So you can use that. You can use pretty much anything. You can even make your own bias tape so it matches your project if you wanted to coordinate that. But that's a completely different, you know, story that I can show you if you want any other day. But anyway, today we're just going to need our scissors. We're going to need our rulers. We're going to need whatever you want to use as the ribbon to tie our project. But this is what the finished project looks like. And it's very, very simple, very basic, but very fancy. You can just open it up. And here I have my utensils and my straw. Okay. And once again, you can use this for anything you want. You can, you know, anything that you can possibly put in a pocket, you'd probably do that. And the cool thing is that you can actually customize your pockets for whatever size you want. So if you want, you know, one huge pocket and another little pocket, it's cool. If you want them all teeny tiny pockets, you could do that too. So, yeah, so that's basically it. And I'll show you at the end how to fold it really nicely and, you know, kind of finish that off that way. Okay, so we're going to focus one more time on our sewing machine. Let me know if that's good, if you can see that properly. I'm going to take our utensils out. And here, I'll show you without the utensils in it. It has like the little buckets. But anyway. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start. You can make this with a yard of just regular cotton fabric, and it'll be, you know, whatever you want. You could have 2 different fabrics. You can have one of the same. You can, you know, pretty much anything you want to do, like anything with sewing. It's pretty much wherever your imagination takes you. But basically, I'm just using 2 of the same colored ones. And what we're going to do is, like every other project that we start, just wash and dry your fabric first. It's going to go ahead and, you know, shrink your fabric to whatever it's supposed to. And then that way, whenever you do end up using your project and you pop it in the machine, it doesn't kind of like look weird, and then it's kind of like wonky. So always wash your fabric before doing your project. If you didn't right now, that's okay. You know, totally cool. But yeah, you're basically going to need either a pencil or a fabric marker. Again, I'm using my dry erase marker so you guys can see what I'm doing. You can use rotary cutters and a mat, scissors, pretty much the basics. Of course, you need your just a sewing machine, and here we go. So I went ahead and pre-cut my fabric just to save a little bit of time, but you want to cut 2 rectangles 9 inches by 20 inches. Again, if you're looking for something for your garden or for your craft supplies, feel free to make this, you know, as big as you might want to make it. But for this particular project, we're going to go ahead and use 2 9 by 20 inches. So of course, the 9 inch is going to be on the short side and the 20 inch is the long side. So when we refer to short sides and long sides, you know, you're going to know that those are the measurements. Okay. All right, so we're going to go ahead and press about 1/2 inch of the short side. Okay, and you can do this with your machine. You can do this with, sorry, I'm just going to cut this little piece of, I don't like little strays on my projects. That's my little pet peeve, I guess. But yeah, you can use your iron, or you could just use your lovely hands and just press it. If you want it to stay a little bit in place, you don't have an iron, you can also pin it. Yeah, I'll pin it just to show you. You could pin it sideways because we are not going to sew over that. Yeah, and it'll keep it in place. But once again, if you want to iron it to make it like super duper neat, you can go ahead and do that. Okay, so you're going to do that on one piece of the fabric and on the other piece of the fabric. And you're going to, I don't know if I mentioned this, but you're going to fold that 1/2 inch like into the wrong side. So this is the right side, the bright side, and I folded it into the wrong side. Okay, and we're going to do that again. Right here. Again, just about 1/2 inch. Doesn't have to be perfect. If you want to do it with iron, go ahead. If not, you could just use pins, your fingers, you know, whatever you got available. Okay. All right, so that's our first step. Now we're going to go ahead and sew our pieces of fabric together. So we're going to put these right sides together. So we already know the difference between right and the wrong side. So right sides together. Okay, line it up as best as possible. It doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, we're going to go ahead and pin to secure our fabric so it doesn't shift around or move anywhere. I'm going to go ahead and do it more towards the center. And you don't need a lot of pins, just a few, nothing crazy. Again, maybe like 6. I don't like to use a lot of pins. I find sometimes pins are very distracting and you end up putting more attention on where the pin is so you don't get it stuck under the machine, or you don't get like finger pricked with it. So so I like the fewer the better, but of course that's preference. Okay, so I've pinned my project. I don't know if you could see it, but you know, it's kind of all along this way, so it doesn't shift or anything. We're going to use a straight stitch. Again, if you're using elastic type of stretchy material, a zigzag stitch is much better. But right now we're going to use a straight stitch. So once again, we're going to go ahead and put our knob to the straight stitch setting, and we're going to leave it at 2. I really like my stitch length like between 2 and 3. I find it to be a nice looking stitch. Like it's very neat looking, especially if you're doing like edges and stuff like that. But anyway, this is going to be the inside of your project, so nobody's going to see it. It doesn't matter. If you mess up, it's okay. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start sewing, and we're going to start sewing along one of the long edges. And the only reason why I specify that is because if you start from the short edge, you're only going to be able to sew 2 sides of your rectangle, and you want to be able to sew 3. So ideally, the opening of where you had that little press in the beginning, that's going to remain open, okay, for the first part of the project. So you really want to start on either side of the long sides, and you're going to just go ahead and sew in a U shape almost, just to get the 3 sides and leaving that top opening unstitched. Okay, so we're going to get you closer to our machine, and I'm going to start. Okay, and you want to use, you know, coordinating or whatever type of thread. I usually like to use different types of thread, just because I find using like a different type of color thread gives the project a little pizzazz, you know. It just, I don't know, it gives it like a nice little pop of color. But anyway, okay, so we're just going to go ahead and start. And again, it's going to be a 1/4 inch seam allowance. It's kind of like the usual. What I did want to say is that if you did want to backstitch at this point, you can backstitch. Once again, to backstitch, you just either press your button or your lever, and you just go in. So when you release it, it just starts going the normal way again. Okay. Okay. So once again, you're going to try to check to see that everything's catching. The last thing you want to do is, sew all the way around and then, something doesn't catch, but it's very fixable, so it's okay. Okay, we got to the end of the first side, and now we're going to turn our fabric. So what I mean by that is that we're just going to shift the fabric so you don't have to, cut it and then start again. So to do that, you're going to make sure that your needle is down, okay? And that way when you raise your presser foot, your fabric is not going to shift, okay? You could just, wiggle it around. You're just going to go ahead and shift it, turn it. That's why it's called turning the fabric. And then you're going to go ahead and start again. Now you're going to see that my fabric is a little wonky. I didn't do a very good job at cutting it, so sorry. But, I'd rather kind of fix it up in a little bit and then, waste that little piece of fabric. Now here I went a little bit too far, so I know that my fabric is not going to catch. I'm going to just backstitch a little bit. And that way I can turn my fabric, and again, needle in the down position, and then keep going. Okay, you might notice that I'm not pulling at this part, like at the end of I'm just kind of helping guide it. I find that if I just guide it like this, it just doesn't go as straight for me as I would like. So I usually like to, just in case you were wondering why it looked like I was pulling the fabric, I'm not pulling it. Just, kind of guiding it through. Okay, so now we're going to get to the end again, and this is where our pressed fabric was. So just make sure that it's neatly, stays pressed. And again, you can backstitch. You don't have to, but you can. Okay, so now we're going to leave our needle in the right upright position. We're going to go ahead and cut it. Just a side note, your machine might have a little hooky thing right over here. That little hooky thing is actually your thread cutter, and it's there to help you cut your thread to the right length. Sometimes when we cut the thread with our scissors, we do it too short, and then when we start stitching, it kind of goes back into the machine itself, and then you have to rethread the whole thing. So definitely try to trim your tails a little bit longer. And if you do have that little side piece, use the little side piece. That's what it's for, okay? This is a little bit of an older machine, so I think this model just didn't come with it. But if you have it, totally use it. Okay, so now we have our rectangle sewn. And what I said before, you know, I didn't cut my fabric very well. See, it's kind of like, you know, I tried to make the best out of my fabric, so it kind of, you know, but I try to just sew in a way where it just went around that little cut area. So if you ever have, you know, a scrap of fabric, just try to salvage it. You know, it's a good practice to try to salvage your fabric and kind of, you know, sew around those little parts, especially if it's at the beginning of a project, because by the end, they won't even tell that it was a wonky cut. Just gonna gather these, go like that. Okay, so we're just gonna take all the pins out. Pin, pin, pin. And let's see. Okay, and again, we're gonna check for some holes. It doesn't look like there's any holes. If there are, it's very simple to fix. You just go to your machine and you just basically start sewing a little bit away from that, and then you just kind of go through it. I wish I could show you. I might want to make a hole on this just so I can show you. But for time's sake, I'll just go ahead and do that. Okay, so now you have, you know, kind of like a bag, if you will, a pillowcase. But you're just going to turn it over. Now, you might be asking, hey, Maria, why don't you do the same thing as you did? Oh, look, I do have a hole. I just noticed. Oh, I do have a hole. I can show you how to fix it. Okay, so, but back to what I was saying. You might be saying, hey, how come, you know, you're not going to zigzag or do anything special to those edges? You definitely can if you want to. That is something that I totally just suggest. And I'm going to do it quickly to show you again just how to maneuver that zigzag stitch. And I'm also, I don't think I have enough fabric to cut around for pinking shears. But yes, you can use your pinking shears to debulk, or you can use your zigzag stitch. So right now I'm going to repair my holes because I do have some holes. I just noticed one and a teeny tiny one. So what happened was this. So remember our last project, I said that I usually go on the seam allowance based on the shorter fabric if our fabrics don't match. Well, you know, I didn't follow my own advice, and what happened was exactly that. I followed the big one, the big fabric, and not the shorter fabric. So I sewed the 1/4 inch seam allowance, but it was too close to the edge for our short piece of fabric. So it ended up leaving holes. So to fix it, very, very simple. You're just going to go back to your machine. And you know what? Since it looks like this whole side is a little bit too close for comfort for me, I'm just going to start, and I'm just going to go ahead and straight stitch, making sure that I catch that whole piece of fabric. Okay. So now you know. This is why, you know, you do it on the shorter piece if you have 2 different size pieces, like I did. Okay. And I just realized you're just looking at my hands. Okay. I didn't back stitch there because we already had one in place. So, you know, I didn't really bother to do that. Okay, so now we're gonna go ahead and I don't think this is in the directions, I apologize. But again, if you want to avoid fraying, especially if you have a fabric that is fraying a lot, do the zigzag stitch. It'll only take a little bit and it's really gonna help you make a lasting project. So I'm gonna do just that and show you once again how to do the zigzag stitch. It's as easy as just turning your stitch knob or button, depending on what you have. And I'm just gonna go ahead and turn it to 3, just because I really like that in the middle type of length of stitch and size of stitch. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna go on the edges. Okay, it doesn't have to be quarter seam or anything like that. Just go through the edges and just make sure that both pieces of fabric are catching under that zigzag stitch. Just try not to go outside of the already sewn straight stitch, because that's just going to affect the width of your fabric when you turn it inside out. Okay. Okay, we've gotten to our corner. So again, we're just gonna go ahead and turn that fabric. No need to cut or start over. Okay, you see what I did here? I didn't ensure that my needle was in the down position. So when you do try to move your fabric, it's gonna, you know, kind of run away. So always, always, always try to make sure that your needle's in the down position so it doesn't go anywhere. Okay. This position. Now we're going to go ahead and cut. Perfect. Alrighty. Okay, so see my trusted dusty zigzag stitch. Okay, it's going to prevent the fraying and it's going to go ahead and reduce some of the bulk. Okay, so now we're going to turn this guy inside out. With your fingers, you can press out the corners, make sure that they're not hiding. Okay, and once again, you are more than welcome to go over to your ironing station and press your whole fabric project, I mean, and you know, it just depends on what you want to do with that. Just a simple, you know, once over with your hands, I think is sufficient. But once again, if you want to go ahead and iron it, that is completely up to you. And of course, it'll make for a neater project. Okay, so now you see this is our opening. And at the beginning, you remember how we just folded that 1/2 inch? It is so it just gives us a cleaner edge when we stitch it. So right now, all we're going to do is we're going to stitch that little opening up. We're just going to use a straight stitch. So go ahead and turn your knob again, straight stitch, and we're going to edge stitch it. So again, as close to the edge as possible, ensuring both of your fabrics are caught, okay? Alrighty, so let's go ahead and turn to our beautiful machine. Okay, you could also do a quarter seam allowance too if you're comfortable with that. But an edge stitch is pretty good for this too. Okay, and if you wanted to go ahead and do a little secure stitch with a little bit of back stitching, you can do that too. All right, here we go. I'm gonna back stitch it. There we go. We're ensuring okay. Alrighty, and okay. This is another thing that happens when you edge stitch. You see that? I edge stitched too close to the edge, and I didn't catch some of my, fabric. So I still have openings. This can be fixed one of two ways. You can go ahead and pop off all that stitch if you wanted it to look very pretty and neat, or you can just go over it again. But since this is on the outside, I'm just going to go ahead and take out the stitches because, I want it to look nice and presentable. So let's go ahead and do that very quickly. And again, you just need a seam ripper and it'll take out all those stitches. So, and that's like the good thing and the bad thing about back stitching sometimes, because yes, it does secure your stitches, but at the end of the day, if you do make a mistake, it's just a lot more that you have to take out. So let's see. See, so it just becomes a little bit of a nuisance. I hate having to use my seam ripper. It's just, it's not as fun as actually sewing. So sometimes it's easier to take them out than others, depending on how tight the stitch is and the fabric you're using. The one recommendation I always do is that if you're doing like a pleather or a synthetic type of material, that one is a little bit trickier, because if you use that, what ends up happening is that if you have to rip the seam, the holes, you can see the holes basically that your machine just made. So, with that type of fabric, always be a little bit more, just in case you were thinking of a fancy schmancy, pleather utensil holder. Okay, so come on, buddy. There we go. Come on. So try not to get your fabric in there, because sometimes what happens is that your fabric gets, like the threads of your fabrics gets caught in your seam ripper and you make a big hole in your fabric. So try not to do that. There we go. We're coming along. All right. This is good. Good stuff. All right. So again, this is what not to do. So perfect. I'm just going to take all these little threads out, clean that up. And you do want to take all those little threads out because they might get tangled with your new thread. And you don't want that. Let me just. Okay, I'm just trying to make sure all of my stitches are out so I can start over again. Okay. And again, these are all errors that we all make. It's not, you know, that you're not good with your machine or that, you know, you're not good at sewing. It happens, you know. Okay, yay. All right, we're back to sewing. Okay. All right, so this time I'm going to be very diligent in making sure I catch both of the sides of my project because I definitely do not want to rip that seam again. That was annoying. Okay. And again, you can backstitch or you can, you know, leave it be. All right, let's see. That should be a lot better. Okay. And then backstitch. Much better. Okay. Okay. Perfect. Gonna cut those little tails. Okay. Okay, so now you just have one big sewn pillowcase, I guess you can call it. But now what we're going to do is just turn it lengthwise. And you're going to go ahead and fold the edge that you just sew shut, that you just sewn shut. And we're going to go ahead and do about 5 inches. And again, it totally depends on what you plan to store on here. If the things that you plan to store are longer, go ahead and make that a deeper pocket. If they're shorter, go ahead and make them a little shorter. Totally up to you. For this particular project and on average, 5 inches is pretty good, you know, and I'm just going to measure that out. Yep, that's about 5 inches, and that's about 5 inches on this side too. Okay, I'm just going to try to make sure it's not crooked. Okay. All right, and next you're just going to go ahead and add some pins. Okay, 1, 2. Okay, we're going to add those pins. And now you're going to get whatever it is that you're choosing to use as your, I guess, ribbon closure. Like I said, I'm using this very nice looking rope kind of thing. But you can use bias tape, you can use twill tape, you can use, you know, regular type of ribbon, whatever your heart desires, you can totally use it. What I wouldn't use is that type of ribbon that has the, that like aluminum in it, so it like shapes. I wouldn't use that just because it might get like interfere with the needle of your sewing machine. So stay away from that, but any other type of ribbon is cool. All right, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna use 24 inches, okay? 24 inches. I'm gonna go ahead and do this. You can measure that out with your tape measure, with your match, however you would like to do it. I'm going to make a little knot because mine frays. So if it frays, you can always like make a little knot, or you can run it through the machine. But I want to make mine a little rustic. So I'm going to go ahead and tie that there. And I'm going to go ahead and tie the other end too. The other end actually had tape on it, so I'm taking that tape out. Okay. I'm going to make another little over here. It's going to look very nautical. Okay. See, now I have my ends. They're not going to fray. They're not going to do anything. Perfect. All right. So we're going to fold in the middle. Okay. So you're going to have like two pieces like that. You're not going to cut it or anything. You're just going to go ahead and insert it on the left side of your project. So we have already pinned our pocket in place, our main pocket, we're going to call it. Okay. And all we're going to do is go ahead and insert the little nub into that main pocket. And we're going to pin it. Okay. So let's make sure that this is pinned. Actually, let's pin it this way. Okay, I usually like to pin my straight pins like on a sideways instead of like up and down, just because since you're sewing and it's an up and down motion, you just have to keep more in mind about, you know, taking the straight pin out. Most of the time, if you're going slow enough, and you're careful, your straight pin will go through the machine and it won't break it. Okay. And by most of the time, I mean, you know, maybe like 80% of the time. So that's why I like to pin a little bit away. But since this is, you know, close to there, I'm just going to leave it there and then take out the pin when I get close to there. Okay. So once again, my project, like I said, it's not perfect. So you're going to see that my project has a little bit sticking out. And that's okay. You can do one of two things. You can line up the edges, okay? And what that's going to do is going to create almost like a bigger pocket. So if you have something bulkier, like let's say you have a gardening tool that you want to stick in there and it has like a rounder, bulkier handle, it'll fit in there, okay? Or if you want to stuff a napkin in, you can do that. Or alternatively, you can just sew it like it is and just, you know, make sure that you catch everything in there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to try it and, you know, sew it so my edges line up, okay? And again, we're going to use a straight stitch, okay? And I am going to back stitch. I find that that secures the pocket very well. Okay, so we're going to go like this. All right. I'm going to go ahead and line it up again so it doesn't. If you want to use a pin, you can go ahead and do that. Okay, and here we go. Once again, we're going to get to the end, make sure our needle's in the down position, and we're going to turn the fabric. Down position, turn the fabric. Now here you have one of two options. You can go ahead and keep sewing all around your project to give it that little border all around it. I think that looks pretty, but if that's something you don't want to do, you don't have to. But I'm gonna go ahead and turn my whole project and give it a little border, okay? Okay, so. Okay, so here, I'm gonna be very careful. Take that out and just super careful. And I'm gonna backstitch just to make sure that that ribbon is secure right there. Down. I'm gonna backstitch right here just because it's the end of my project. Perfect. Make sure my needle's in the upright position. Take it out. Cut off all those little pieces. And now I'm going to take out my straight pins. Okay, and now we have a pocket. Yay, we have one big pocket. Now, you see my ribbons in there. It's not going to come off. So now it's time for you to make your other pockets, your compartment pockets. So you can do this in many ways. You can, if you want 2 pockets, you could just do straight down the middle. If you want to, section it off, you can do that too. For purposes of this, I'm going to just go ahead and measure and see how wide my project is right now. So it looks like it's a full 8 inches from here to here. So for me, I'm just going to go ahead and say, I'm going to make 2-inch pockets. So once again, using a fabric marker or something that's going to wash off well, go ahead and make your 2-inch. Okay. I'm going to see it. Okay. So this is what I did with mine. I went ahead and made 2-inch pockets. That way, I can fit my utensils in there quite nicely. Or again, pencils, I don't know, scissors, gardening tools, whatever you like. Okay, so I prefer to sew this end part from the finished edge to the opened edge. And the reason for that is that sometimes when you start at the opening, it kind of bulks up your fabric at the end, and then you wind up with like a little bulge there. So I prefer not to do that. So let's go ahead and finish this off. All right, excited. Okay, so go ahead and just sew along with the lines that we just made. All right. And I would backstitch here, and I would backstitch at the top as well, just to secure it, okay? Perfect. All right, I'm going to take that off. And go ahead and put it. All right, so you see, there's my pocket number 1. And now I'm going to go ahead and do pocket number 2. See, I cut my tails a little bit too long, so I'm too short, so I'm going to just pull them out a little bit. And then last, but definitely not least, my last pocket. Okay. Okay. All righty. So I got my tail is caught in there. Okay. Ta-da! Now you have pockets. 1, 2, 3, 4 pockets. And let's see what we can fit in there. I'm going to fit scissors in here. I'm going to fit another pair of, you know what? I can fit all the utensils that I had before. Let's see. Very nicely. And my straw. So this is how it's going to close. I'm going to go ahead and fold that flap down, and we're just going to start rolling. And then when you get to the end, you're just going to go ahead and do one of these. And ta-da! You have a utensil holder.
It looks so great.
Thanks.
That's awesome.
Yay!
Now you just need to make one for each of the people in your family.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But yeah, you can fit like so many things in here. Markers, yeah, do markers. You could do your sewing stuff. You could do,
That's such a good idea, especially if you sew on the go.
Yeah. Well, you know what? You could do like a total mending kit too. Like if you wanted to do like tiny scissors and like put some, thread in there, just in case, something happens and your seam rips, you can fix it.
Absolutely.
But there you go. There you have it.
You can really do a lot with this. Another cute gift too.
Oh, makeup. Your makeup bag. How about that? You could put your eyeliner in there. Maybe
that's
like
a good idea, because it's always crazy when you have to dig through your bag to find one thing. So.
Your lip gloss, nail supplies.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea, Josephine. Now I think we can go to the nail salon again. I haven't been, but
oh gosh, goodness knows I haven't been either. So, but yeah, this is like,
I don't know if anyone's ventured out yet.
No, like I haven't. No, I'm dying to get my hair done, but no, soon. Oy. But yeah, there you go. And then you can wash them, and then if you want to store them, you just store them in a nice, neat drawer.
Definitely.
Yay! Okay.
Oh, Judy said brushes, another great idea.
Yes, toiletries, absolutely. Man, so versatile. This is a very versatile little thing we got here.
Does anyone have any questions about the projects? Did anyone sew along? Does anyone want to
show their project?
I don't know. If anyone wants to show their project, we did have someone last time show us the
Yes.
mask that they made. So if anyone sewed along and wants to show us what they made, we could promote you to a panelist and you could come on camera and we could see what you've been doing. But if not, that's okay. You could always email me a picture of your project too if you don't want to come on camera. So I'll email it again. So if you do want to show us or you have anything to say, again, just use the chat box. I know a few of you have been doing that, so that's great. We appreciate the feedback.
All right.
Well, I did not sew along, so I cannot show off my project, but I mean, these were great. These were really
they're easy, they're quick, and you know, they're lovely gifts, as I mentioned before. And yeah, like you could do so much stuff with it. It's crazy. So much stuff. Plus, like you can put them away nice and neatly, which is what I like about it most.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can make them for different occasions too. Could you imagine a Christmas one or like a Thanksgiving-y one?
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, your guests would be kind of blown away, especially if you have like 18 guests and you made them all like a custom.
Yeah, because you know what I like. I really don't like.
Yeah, people should get started now for that.
Yes, because I don't know about you, but like whenever there's a nice table setting, I always wind up taking the utensils that aren't mine. You know what I mean? Like I just start grabbing stuff and it's like, oh wait, why do I have somebody else's utensils? So this is nice. That way you can ensure your guests have their own, utensils and they don't get confused.
Yeah, and you could even hide like little gifts in them.
Yes, and you can pin like little, if you like to do place setting. Yeah, if you want to do place, you could put their name on it too. So nice.
It's really a really cute idea that people should start soon. Okay, Alice, I sewed along and created 2 wonderful projects. Thank you very much. I have a friend who is immune compromised and now carries her own utensils with her.
Yay!
That's awesome, Alice.
Awesome. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's great that we have a solution to a problem. And I think a lot of us now are maybe going out to restaurants, and if you are concerned about germs and COVID, I think this is a good idea to bring your own utensils. So,
very true.
Or
even lunch bags. I guess when school's back in, you can totally say like, hey, here, take your own, spoon for your snack or whatever.
Yeah, I think as we enter the new reality, the new, I think it's something to think about, and why not, especially when you go to a place and even for an environmental reason where you'll be using plastic utensils, why not bring your own?
Exactly.
So it's a very good idea.
I second that.
Thank you for everyone who shared their ideas. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for being patient. There was a lot of hiccups in this tutorial.
Like I said, I think that highlights the mistakes we could have made, and you probably prevented our attendees from making the same mistakes. And when I do this project on my own, I will remember the few things that you did. So that was wonderful.
Yay.
Judy enjoyed the sewing session. We enjoyed having you here, Judy.
Yes, we did. Thank you so much, everybody. I really like these, YouTube tutorial live things. They're pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's great that people can watch them again after. And
Yeah.
if anyone missed the program, they can watch it. So if you missed any of our other programs, definitely you could head to the mcpl.tv and rewatch all the programs we've been doing during this time. So there's some good things on there.
Yeah.
Okay, well, at this point, I think we've answered all the questions. So thank you everyone for coming, and reach out to us if you have any questions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, everybody. Hope you have a great weekend.
Okay. All right, that's everybody. So we got up to 6 people.
I think it still says live on the thing, by the way.
Oh yeah.